We may not be able to get in on the hurling action like we're used to, but we can get in on some exclusive offers from Renault. To celebrate their third year as official car partner of the GAA, Renault is offering a range of special offers exclusive to all GAA club members. So now you can take home the win right to your door. Check out renault.ie/GAA to find out more.
With Renault, official car partner of the GAA, taking the passion of a nation to a whole new gear.
A grain of rice, a grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lads.
There's a small bit of a needle there.
Now, come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Our mission was to show that we're no longer the whipping boys of Munster.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Morning, Anthony.
Great form, Dalo.
Eric, how are you?
No bother.
Good stuff. TJ, you're like a man that went straight to the Galtee Inn or something like that below around your country, and you've the straw hat and all there, have you?
I have the straw hat and all. It's just first warm today, like that. It was warm yesterday, but today is even better. Heading for 30 degrees.
Do you remember when you beat us in the Munster final '94 and the famous fellow went out in the field? I think they was calling him Owensy or something today, and he said, Limerick went down today, they got the job done. You can't go down to the shop and get your groceries. You ever see that clip, no? We'll get Rafe to find that. He's out in the middle of the field. You can't go down to the shop and get what you need and you haven't enough money. Limerick came in, did the business today. It's a famous one. Big cheer behind him after he hammered us. Congrats anyway, kid. Congrats.
Yeah, very good. I was just saying to the boys there, like just one for the ages, one that we'll be talking about for a long number of years, 10 points down, obviously. It'll go down in history now and one that people will talk about for a long time. I wasn't that optimistic at halftime, Dalo. I will say that straight up. We weren't playing well. Tips seemed to have a hold in the game beautifully. They were just tactically getting everything right. And the general feeling from us Limerick supporters, I had the privilege of sitting in the stand in the company of the great Richie Bennis yesterday. So great entertainment for the game. And the general feeling among us was that the third quarter, Dalo, if we could maybe get it back to 4 or possibly 5 heading down the stretch, we would have been giving ourselves a chance. But I don't think Nostradamus could have said what was going to happen in that third quarter, could he?
Yeah, and just before I go on, just for all my tip buddies, I'm even drinking the Tipperary water this morning, lads. I know Shane McGrath are listening. But yes, I don't ever remember seeing anything like it, Derek. So for the old column this morning, I went back to a rugby match way back, and we don't mention rugby in this show, obviously. Leinster dead and buried against Northampton. I'm not saying dead and buried, but like you could like the boys sure came back and drew in '96, 10 points down, TJ and Co. and a draw. But like to come back and would have won by 8 points, save for Mark Keogh's goal. No, I'm not saying look at every goal is a goal, you know. But like I kind of said to Des Cahill at one stage, sitting beside us watching it above, I said, Desi, they're going to beat them 10. Not alone were they down 10 at halftime, they're going to beat them 10. I never saw a turnaround like it in such by the water break. The match was over, like.
Yeah, look, all about. I think, look, Kylie summed it up afterwards. I think he said, first of all, they asked him to engage physically more, you know, and you could see that the tempo is naturally up. And then, look, a combination of everything that's good about Limerick, you know, power, pace, skill, work ethic, all on display in one quarter. Like, I think he talked about, I think in his 4 or 5 years involved, he said it's the best quarter they've ever had of hurling, and hard to disagree with that.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah. And obviously they'd rung in a couple of changes enforced, I suppose, in Richie English's case. We hope he's okay. We wish him the best of luck. Hopefully I didn't see any big ice packs on or anything, so hopefully it's nothing with the knee anyway. I don't know, TJ, you might know more about that. But obviously I felt a bit sorry, you know, after the match for Graham Mulcahy, because there was a general malaise all over the field. And of course, as you know, TJ, from your days playing there, the old corner forward gets removed, like, but he wasn't in it, to be fair. I suppose Shamey had shown it for a couple of balls, a couple of points scored, and Peter Casey maybe half a chance of a goal and took the point. But like the two subs definitely had a settling effect as soon as they came in.
There's no doubt, I think, in this team that Gillan gives more of a presence inside, and there's that threat And I suppose maybe what he's done over the last couple of years, he just brings that, whereas Graham is a different type of player. But like you said there, you'd have to feel sorry for it because it was like polar opposites in terms of performance and in terms of ball going in. The first half, Dalo, I was just saying, tactically, I nearly need to stop it there. Like maybe if I could have froze the play after 10 minutes and after 15 minutes, 20 minutes, trying to figure out what both sides were doing because it was that intense around that middle. Like,
and you were there, like.
And I was there. I was sitting in the middle of the field in the north stand. I had really, really good tickets, and my contact is really looking after me now. I can't spill the beans, but it's really, really good there. Really good. Yeah.
Richie Bennett and yourself, huh?
Myself and Richie, yeah. But what Tip were doing in the first half, they really, really worked. There was a breeze. Like Tip did play with a breeze, and what was it worth? It was probably worth maybe 10, 15 yards in Barry's puck out. And if you look at his puck outs in the first half, they were practically reaching the 21-yard line. They were getting past that Limerick half-back line, and they were getting a few breaks off them. And let's say, like I don't know, maybe 1-3, 1-4 came off that puck out straight down the heart, and it was working for them. Like
2 goals, did you?
2 goals, yeah.
2 goals.
Yeah,
very
and
similar.
Like Tip set up like they had a man-for-man plan. Like Brendan was detailed to Mark Keane when he was in that centre forward position. They had Dan McCormick in the middle of the field. He was going back, picking up Keane then as much as he could once Keane came out, and that was a lot after a while because Limerick couldn't get their hands on the ball. And then if you saw 3 or 4 times when the Limerick half-backs and the backs coming out had the ball, they had to take that half a second or that extra little touch because the moment they got their head up, Tip seemed to have the space killed. It was working beautifully for them, and they were rolling ball through Jason Ford, who was positioned in between centre forward, and then he was jumping to midfield when Dan picked up Keane, right? So they had that everything really, really well worked out. And I was saying to the lads, neither team was playing a sweeper system. Both teams were playing with at least 2 up top, right? Whether it was Canlin and said Bubbles, Jake Morris kind of drifted in and out. Limerick were trying to play with maybe Peter Casey and Shemmy Flanagan, and Graham was probably in and out. So it's kind of a new hybrid model where a midfielder picks up that centre forward, then the opposite centre forward kind of jumps into midfield. Both teams were kind of doing the same thing, and it really ran for Tip in the first half. They're used to the ball, they're ball to hand, and they're scoring. And I'd say, listen, I haven't watched the game back in full, right? But my mind tells me right now is it probably could even have been more than 10 at halftime. They missed 1 or 2 half chances. Bubbles had a couple of wides. Like Tip registered nine wides in the first half. And like at halftime, like we were reaching for positives that weren't there. We were looking for anything at all. Kind of saying, need a good start to the second half. So you'd have to say that tactically, the way they used the ball, the way they set up, the puck out in that first half, I would say it was probably as near to the preparation perfect for Tip as you could get.
Yeah. Kind of, we were all kind of saying above, kind of Eamon O'Shea written all over this, coming up with something new the whole time, and that is the fascinating thing about the centre forwards coming deep, but not really being picked up by the other centre forward and midfielder, and leading to confusion and leading maybe for one team to get a bit more space. And we were saying, who the hell is on Ford? I was saying, why doesn't he bring Barry Nash out on Ford? Maybe, let Kyle sit a little bit deeper and let Declan Hennon. Because Ford was just doing wreck. And as you said, Bubbles, Bubbles, I think, had 3 wides in the first half. He certainly had 2, maybe 3. And he'd have been a contender for man of the match for the first half. Ford was the man of the match for the first half. So, Mark, I know Limerick turned it around, but for Tip, you'd have to say there was an element of, was it 2-17 to 1-5 as the second half? No matter how well Limerick did, there has to be an element of collapse as well.
Yeah, I think the psychology of the game is very important here, Anthony. And I think looking at Liam Sheedy at halftime, he was like a man possessed going in at halftime. And I thought that Kiley and Kinnerk, kind of more or less cruised in at halftime, very much, I suppose, on the back foot, but I would say steady as well at the same time, and even for Henry to say at halftime that he felt the Tip were going to go on and win easy, I think there was potentially a possibility that the Tip felt at halftime that the job was done. We're hurling out of our skins, we're going to show Limerick who the real team around Munster are. We're back to our best. And I think psychologically, I think Tip thought they had the job done at halftime. But I think true champions like Limerick
does anyone think, I know Henry did say it and I was watching him, does anyone really think, you think back to Clare, 9 points down twice against Galway, bring it back. No, Feather couldn't come back to our own level. No, I wouldn't have expected the takeover that we saw. But I'd have my doubts. Like,
I think Anthony, when you but when you have a squad maybe of 15 players out there on the field and you have 4 or 5 selectors, there must be 1 or 2 or 3 fellas saying in their own head going in halftime, Jesus, we're in a great position here. This job is done. There's nowhere we're going to give up a 10-point lead. We've often been in those situations. I remember playing against Klein years ago. We were 11 points up at halftime, and it was a huge game for the club. And I said to myself, there's no way we can get beaten from here. And we did. We got beaten by a point in the end. And once your foot comes off the pedal, Dale, as you know, it's very hard to get it back on. And then you throw in the couple of exceptional goals, I think, that Limerick got. They were real. And even though there was only 3,500 Limerick supporters there, it felt like there was 20,000 supporters there, particularly when the Kyle Hayes goal went in. And I think the body language of all the Tipperary players when the Kyle Hayes goal went in, just they sunk. And like to come from inside his own 65-yard line. I remember going back to see Wexford and Kilkenny years ago. I see a player bouncing the ball off the ground and bringing it back under hurl. But Kyle Hayes did it twice in that 60, 70-meter run yesterday. And to strike the ball into the net with the hurley upside down, just incredible. Like, but I think the psychology around it, Dale, I have an awful feeling. I think the Tip actually thought it was done. And the minute the boys came at him, they just couldn't get their foot back on the pedal. I know that's down to Limerick as well, but I did definitely thought that Kylie was very, very steady, I must say. I thought Liam got consumed into the game as well, and sometimes that happens when you get consumed, that there may be some obvious things there that you need to change and you don't see it. And then next of all, the game is going away from you and you can't get it back.
Yeah, it's that fine line though, and I suppose Liam has been more animated this year, I would feel, maybe than I've seen him. Obviously his early days, he's very animated, but in this period of his management. But Derek, did that ever happen? It kind of happened to me a couple of times, and it's a very difficult one. I remember going in. Now we did kick on and win it, but the league final in 11 with the Dubs and Kilkenny, and be in it at half time was nearly our message. Be in it, giving ourselves a chance in the second half. I think we were down the tunnel 7 or 8 up, and we nearly had to take a step back, and say, "Hold it here now, lads. This is off our message." So I don't know. We send in Hedger to the dressing room, say, "Shut up about everything now. Think about your performance. Shut up." And we stayed outside for a couple of minutes, and just chatted about we have to bring a different message in here now. Yeah. It's a weird one, isn't it? When you can imagine the Tip meeting somewhere around Cork. And they're saying, they had all their tactics and they were brilliant, but they probably had no idea they'd be ahead 11 and up 10 at the break.
Yeah, and I'd imagine they were as skeptical about being ahead as they were being behind, to be honest with you. I don't think, I actually watched it back this morning. Granted, Liam was very animated, but I was actually lip reading him this morning, and he was actually verbally saying to the boys, job half done. So I'd imagine any management at that top level are going in, and I don't think the message is at half time, you know what I mean? Same again will do us, lads. I actually think it's the opposite. I'd say it's the same situation that you've talked about there, where the management meet and say, listen, we need to drive it again through the roof. That'd be my take on it. I think they'd probably be as skeptical about as the lead as they are about being lax in any way. So without knowing Liam particularly well, I'd imagine that's the message. Looking at, I think they had to take it on to a new level. And the one interesting thing for me, I got a text after the match last night. It's Limerick's ability to be able to, I don't know what you call it, the posh word on it would probably be corrective analysis. They're able to correct things on the fly. It's almost like you have to come with something different again on the back of doing something different at the start, if you like, because they seem to be kind of figuring it out as the game goes along. So what I mean by that, I suppose, is they had the difficulty of the Dan McCormick picking up Keane Lynch system and the long ball. And so a couple of things contributed to that. Dan Morrissey, for all, gave a physical presence on the edge of the square, and Gillan obviously gives you that outlet ball. He's kind of a different scenario, which actually ironically means not only can you hit it in, but you can actually run it through the lines a bit better. And Hegarty and Morrissey and Lynch came that little bit deeper, which allowed Donoghue and Donovan to kind of sit, which allowed Declan Hannon to do his normal job, I suppose, and Diarmaid Burns to do his normal job where they don't mark their men. So getting back to the original question, I suppose, the point I'm making is that if you're in there at half time and it's going well for you, maybe that's the time to change it up. It's not a kind of a time to where you say more of the same, keep it going, this is what we do. It might be the time where you actually go with Callan on his own inside, Jake Morris back out and flood it for about 10 minutes, make it messy as possible for 10 minutes. You know, it's like the dilemma, I suppose, Anthony. I always think of your game against Cork at half time when, you know, when we went for a shootout approach in the year Ryan O'Dwyer was sent off, and you change it up then, and you change it up. Our semi-final in 17 against Cork was the same, where you're thinking of changing it on the hoof, on the fly, if you like. And so I think it's gone to that stage with Limerick where if you're ahead, you nearly, instead of doing the same thing and keeping doing the same thing, you might need to change it up slightly. That goes back to a point TJ made off here in relation to Tipperary substitutes, possibly with the heat, with the conditions, where you possibly kind of said to yourself, right, will we get a runner in now for 10, 15 minutes, or will we get some energy in, even if Bubbles is going well, even if someone is going well, do we need energy? And I think that's where it's gone now. You know, they're so good at fixing things, Limerick. And people mightn't like to hear that because Kylie said afterwards it was the physical commitment first, but they did fix things as well tactically.
Yeah, and I would say to that as well, in my own opinion there, sometimes, you know, a very intelligent bunch of players as well. Like, we given off, of course, this management will be admired universally, but I think these are very clever players as well. Like, I think they can sense that, and they talk to each other a lot, I'd say, as well. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff you'd see on social media now last night about whatever was said in that Limerick dressing room at halftime, you could fill halls for the rest of your life with that message. I think that's a load of rot. You know, it's probably back to Kylie saying we didn't embrace the physical stuff. That's a basic message. Like, but look, it was an incredible turnaround. On the Mark, you made the point like that. It probably maybe some of them felt the job done, but have they those subs? And Derek was just saying, TJ made the point offline or before we came on. Like, I'm not being critical now because they're still in the All Ireland. They won it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Have they enough? Like, I'm a casual enough hurling fan, let's say, right? I don't really follow the Fitzgibbon. I don't really follow the minor or under 21, let's say, right? I follow the senior championship and I really enjoy it. Do I know Paddy Cadell? Do I know Mark Keogh? Like, they made good impacts when they came in. We know how good a player, what pedigree they have, how great underage stars, college stars they have been. But does the fella who's from another county now and just tunes in for the big ones, loves to watch us, sit down on a Sunday, glass of wine, loves the hurling, does he know these guys? Whereas he knows Pat Ryan, he knows David Reedy, he knows Kyle, he knows he knows Dan Morrissey, he knows Conor Boylan, and he certainly knows Aaron Gillane coming off the bench. Does he know Willie Connors and these lads?
Yeah, like when you mentioned those fellas now from the Limerick versus the Tipperary, but I suppose at some stage, Anthony, these lads have to be brought in, and it's something we've always mentioned on the pod here like this. Liam is very loyal to the older brigade of players that he has, that he's won a couple of All-Irelands with, so I suppose the big concern is that the fact that Tip have won an under-21 and a 20 All-Ireland, and probably Jake Morris is the only recognised player that has come in from those two squads. And like, they have been won 2 years ago and 3 years ago. Like they definitely should be filtering in more players, I think, at this stage. Like Mark Keogh, I've seen Mark Keogh a good bit with UCC, to be fair. He has plenty of quality. He got a fantastic goal yesterday off his left. I think that probably they need, I suppose Liam just needs maybe that confidence to kick on, and it's very hard to discard fellas that have been very, very loyal to you down through the years. But I'd say there must be a big question mark right now why those players aren't being brought into the panel, or maybe brought into the team more than anything. But then it's hard to question, like Bubbles was on fire in the first half yesterday. Jamie Canlan showed sparks. Jake Morris was very good. I suppose Noel McGrath is the one fella, Anthony, that didn't really ignite yesterday, and he's probably got a lot of game time, I would say. Paddy Cadell, Cian Dillon, a couple of lads. Like, I don't know, Anthony. I think Liam is fierce loyal to his players, and now he's in a backdoor situation. It's pure knockout, and does he
stick or twist, Mark? You're the manager. Does he stick or twist?
It's a massive. Like, I think the draw has a bit to do with it as to who they'll actually play in the quarterfinal. I think if he got a, we'll say if Cork, we'll say just for, or maybe Clare, either of those two teams, I think he would twist.
He won't be
I
playing
think
Clare
he would
though.
win with the younger fellas. But I think if he got Galway in a quarter final, can he play Galway? Like, could be a way different story then. Like, you know, I think Galway will bring a physical edge to the championship. I think look, not saying that they're going to beat Waterford, but I think deep down with Waterford's form, they just haven't brought it forward this year. You'd have to be fancying Galway. So I think a lot might depend, Anthony, on who their opposition is in the next round as to whether he'll stick or twist. But like, if you stop the clock at half time yesterday, you'll be saying that Liam Sheedy has done a fantastic job. The older players are back to their best. They're flying their Hurling Limerick off the field. And like, as we know, 35 minutes later, it's completely the opposite. So who'd want to be a pundit at this game?
Well,
I'm not being critical. Do you know what?
Dalo, do you see Ray Keane's road to London, where Gary Neville sat into the back of the car, right? Did you see that? No. And they were talking about they were talking about England and tactically and the manager and everything, a little bit like what we are doing now, analysing the games, right? And Keane said to Gary Neville, do you know why you're sitting in the back of the car talking about this tactically England setup and all that? And Gary Neville said, why? He said, because you weren't good enough to manager. So, like, we're all here, like, at halftime, Sheedy, and after the game, we look back on John Kiley's actions, and they were calming influence, and it was a calming influence because they won the game. Liam Sheedy's actions are questioned because they lost the game, right? Like, at halftime, it was the perfect performance, and I was even watching the warm-ups yesterday because the heat was unbelievable in the park yesterday, and like, there's no doubt the two warm-ups were down a gear or possibly two. I thought Limerick of the two teams did the lesser, but then we'll say for the 2 or 3 minutes before throw-in, Tip gathered under the shade of the stand, and Limerick gathered in the middle of the field for that 2 or 3 minutes, and you would have thought that maybe the Tip just kind of seemed to maybe just get that piece right, and they started, they were out of the blocks early. And then we talk about half-time team talks, and again, everybody refers to the half-time team talk knowing the results, but at the time yesterday, real time, Sheedy's message could equally have been as good, but Limerick just overpowered them in the second half, and it didn't do. Like, I'm sure we've all been in dressing rooms, like keep it going, keep the scoreboard ticking over. That would easily have been the message. Like, get 2 or 3 scores, win a free, take the steam out of it. Like, the Tip boys would have known full well that Limerick were going to come with everything for that first 10 minutes. They would have definitely known that. They would have portrayed that message. The players would have known it. But sometimes that momentum, Tip couldn't get their hand on the ball. Now, there was a couple of factors as well, like that goal that came, like, just Brendan had that ball in his hand, and it was just an uncharacteristic mistake from him, and that happened. And even Gillan's shot, could he have passed it to Flanagan in the first place? He shot, the rebound came straight to Flanagan, and that brought him back right into the game. And, like, in fairness to
even
Sheedy,
if Hope carried it over the bar.
Yeah,
no.
Like those things. And Limerick would have needed a goal at some stage in that first quarter. And the third quarter resulted in 110 to 1 point, which you couldn't forecast at halftime, no matter what was said in the dressing room. And you would have thought that Mikey Breen and Kyle Hayes, two of them were straight in front of us, right? And there was a great battle going on there. Breen was checking runs, he was following him, and he was hunting him back. And that seemed to be working fairly well, in fairness to Mikey Breen and Sheedy. And then, like, for us Limerick supporters, I suppose, this team is just one to be living in the moment, just something to be really, really enjoyed. Forget about what's happened in the past or the future. It's just a phenomenal team. And we're probably blessed with a bunch of players, you said, with just phenomenal ability and intelligence. But looking at it yesterday again, we might just have 2 players that might be just freaks or completely out of the ordinary. Like what Keane did yesterday, you can't make those. You can't coach those. That's just something that's different, right? And then there's obviously a new tactic, Derek, for everybody now, right? Your goal scorer, you have to play him at number 7, right? A goal a game.
Always
number 7, Dalo, yeah. Right? So, like, he's just like a force of nature when he's going forward. He tried it once, twice in the first half. It didn't really come off. Tip defended it well. Like, in fairness to James Owens, right? We probably ridiculed him and his decision, like, for the inside 21-yard line. If Brendan checked him on the 45-yard line or pulled him back, right, would anybody have said at that stage that there was a goal on? You couldn't, like, right? So, like, what happened there, and I'm saying for Limerick fans and Limerick people at the moment, we just have a couple of players that are just out of the ordinary as far as I'm concerned, and possibly once-in-a-lifetime players, I would say.
Yeah.
Exceptional, man.
Just
They're
unbelievable,
exceptional.
yeah. And like,
Yeah.
Gazelle Hayes, like, I've just been blessed to be with Hayes since he's 16, and watch him then, and God Almighty, like the way he's developed, and just the sheer power of the man. That's the biggest thing, just, and no boundaries to what he can do. And that kind of way. I can get a goal maybe from here, picking it up on his own 45, 50 yards roughly. He started to run anyway. So, it's just incredible. But look, we're not having a go at Liam. Tipperary people are haunted with luck to have Liam Sheedy as their manager. My God, like, this twice to have him as their manager, and All Ireland's delivered both times. So we're not having a go there. And what is it? The great JFK, like, victory has 1,000 fathers, defeat is an orphan. Like, we're always looking for it. It is though. And look at that. We're just poking it out about options, and this is what the Tip fans are saying today. We're, who's to say this man won't turn it around? And I think, as to your point, Mark, I think if Clare were to beat Cork, then because Clare have played Tip, it will be Clare Dublin. But then if Cork beat Clare, that blows it wide open. I think open draw territory then we'd be looking at, So, maybe Galway winning then would also, because they have played Dublin, that would also maybe predetermine what way. So we won't know until we know the two results.
Two results next week.
Did you want to say something else?
I was going to say, Dalo, how many club managers up and down the country are looking at this Kyle Hayes tactic and thinking, who could I put in as an attacking halfback? Because it's definitely going to have an influence of what he's doing and just the power of the player. So every manager is going to be looking for this big, powerful runner to attack from deep. Like, so it's just that much of a factor in the game.
In fairness to Waterford, Callum Lyons, I don't know where he lined out, Derek, on Saturday, but I mean, he was doing that all during the National League. Wing back and 3 points and play again.
Yeah, I would have said even if you look at it without jumping forward to the James Maher, 3 points, Diarmaid Burns, without kind of obviously turning up there. Sean Murphy with Wexford over the last few years. You get Tim O'Mahony's doing a bit of it from wing back now for Cork as well. Niall O'Leary made the goal from corner back for
in the game. You get over with what you put into. It's like the walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it. If your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence, you can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you? Emmy's been out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts. There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
There's no sympathy in this game for anyone. What? No true word.
I'm glad we beat you the following year. No sympathy for anyone. Brilliant. I think he's a hospital Herberstown man. I think Liam Rail knew him well anyway when we were talking about the clip.
I see a few locals there, but on another note, Dalo, I see Declan Hannon has joined a very elusive bunch of someone to lift the Munster Trophy on 3 different occasions, and I was looking at there's only a handful of names on that list, and there was one reasonably recognisable one, as your good self. So it's a phenomenal achievement for Limerick, first time since the 30s.
Was on it as well there. Christy was on it as well there.
So to win Munster 3 in a row in the modern era with the difficulty and the competitiveness of it, I suppose it is a special team. And look, the Munster title on its own is very, very prestigious. Like in my lifetime, we were trying to win a Munster Championship game, and now obviously to win 3 in a row is phenomenal. For Declan Hannon to captain the team to 3 in a row, just incredible achievement. So for us, definitely, it's certainly enjoyed the moment.
Yeah, and
are you hot favourites, you know?
Yeah, so naturally,
the bookies have gone to a mad price, I think.
It's a bad price now, 4-7. Like we were probably, I think, even to win the Ireland beforehand. But like the reality is, Mark, the second half performance being as good as it was, I'm sure the lads will knuckle down. They'll look at that first half. What went wrong? Was it maybe exceptional Tip? Was it a bit of poor old Limerick? Was it a bit of both? So you probably like won't get away too many days with giving a team a 10-point lead. Like so, but you'd have to be seriously impressed with the second half and the guys that came on to have like Dan Morrissey and Gillan. You can probably only imagine now for not on semi-final that will create. And I think John laid down the gauntlet straight away after the game with regards to places on the panel and on the team. And I suppose there was probably eyebrows raised on Friday when Gillan wasn't started. And you have to take these boys, what they're looking at over the last number of weeks, and maybe Gillan's performance the last day. I suppose even to have the kahunas to go into a Munster final and to drop your free taker, your inside forward, whether was on merit, whether it was a little bit of a lesson, whether it was a little bit of both, they still did it. And it was a little bit Cody-esque about it, all right, like, and I sent out the right message. When the result goes your way, it's the perfect message.
Yeah.
It's back to that same thing again, isn't it, Derek?
Yeah, it's very true. And even, you get a kind of picture of the Limerick camp as well. It was Graham Mulcahy's reaction when he was taken off. I thought he was very, very gracious. Like there was a shaking of the hands right up into the stand. I was watching him after the game even, and the disappointment, they're not going well and involved in the celebrations. I thought when Bubbles was taken off, there was a bit of a, kind of a little bit of a different kind of reaction when in terms of the body language, when you've lost the lead, etc. But I thought it was kind of a snapshot of that Limerick camp in terms of, it was Graham who had probably been flying for the last 2 or 3 weeks, picked on merit, no doubt, in terms of how Kiley operates. Doesn't go well, and acknowledgement to that even in his body language coming off. There was no kind of strop, there was no throwing at a hurley, there was no histrionics. Now, not that there was from Bubbles either. Bubbles was making a point about the space on the field or something was happening anyway. But the point I'm making, I suppose, is you got a kind of a snapshot of the Limerick camp all in, and Dan Morrissey and Gillan's, contribution when they come on is rightly merited, I suppose, on the back of the result. But they seem to have a lot right in the camp, and a lot right in terms of the player mix and the management approach.
Well, you have to too, Derek, because yourself in situations like when everything's going well and you get the box in the nose, right? Like your default is probably back to your setup and your training, and that came through there in that third quarter. Yeah. Like that's what does happen naturally. Like if your setup is questionable or there's something, maybe some little piece not right, then it won't all come together. And we probably all have experienced that, both positive and negative, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But TJ, I'd say we won 2 and acknowledge we were unlucky not to get a third maybe. And I don't ever remember looking in. Now, a couple of the forwards got a bit of a hard time, I'd say, from memory. But I don't ever remember him actually dropping one of the real main men. No, I'm not going to name any names, but you can probably think of 4 or 5, 6, and we would have a Gillan in that category with Limerick, right? And I remember lads going very bad in training now, not going well, but he still didn't and Cody was the man that used to do that. Cody was the man that used to say, look, nobody. No, probably Henry wasn't dropped, but we all know the work rate Shefflin had, like that you probably didn't need to get to that situation. But most of the rest of them spent time sitting down at some stage. And like, that's a massive message going forward for Limerick.
It is. And even during the week, any Limerick people I would have met, right, when you were talking about the team for the Munster final, the general opinion was that Dan would probably start and pick up Shane McCann. That was the general feeling, and the rest of the team would more or less stay the same. But then that was presenting like the boys would do not play Richie English or Barry Nash. And to go back to what Derek is saying there, right, is obviously the boys were lighting up in training. And I suppose when you're out of the first 15 and the lads now have full control of that, is you need to be playing really much above your station to get the jersey back. And like that just drives training. Like you don't need to say a whole lot. Like guys know that now this week coming, the next 3. Like if somebody rests this week or next week and maybe takes their eye off the ball, like could the boys not start them? Absolutely could. The message is very clear. It's a difficult one. Dalo, like we've all been on the line and maybe one of our better forwards isn't going well, but like you're kind of saying, Jesus, we can't play without him. We've all been there. So I take it from that laugh that you've definitely had that conversation. So it's a powerful position to be in, and to bring on Dan Morrissey and Gillan was definitely massively influential in the game, because even Dan's flicks in the second half to knock the ball away from Canlon, it took the stuffing out of him, it took the stuffing out of the chances, and it definitely shored up that piece there, the tip got some success out of it.
Yeah, I remember, I will not name the game, the team, and I let people speculate because it could be anyone. But I remember a fellow selector coming up to me on the line and saying we'd made 2 changes at this stage, and the other crowd had made 4 probably. And he said, we better make a change, Dalo. And I knew we were down a couple of players anyway with injuries and things. And I said, take one look up behind you there into the stand now and tell me which of them is going to make it better. I had great respect for them all, but I felt what I was looking out at was better than what I was turning around looking at. But sure, look, again, if you win, you end up not making the changes. Like Johnny Callan, my great old mentor, Clarecastle, used to often say, Jesus, it took us 3 weeks to pick it. And we changed it in 13 minutes, do you know? And we ended maybe it took us 3 nights sitting down to pick the team for the county final, and we changed it after 17 minutes. Do you know? It is gas, isn't it? We're so reactive, and we hear something in the crowd, or we and that's, I suppose, in fairness to Kylie, a big call, and the other men, when we have to move it on, or we'll be here until about the middle of Tuesday morning. So congrats, Limerick, right? The noisy neighbours have won 3 in a row, so fair play. We can't take away from the class. And so look, lads, it's boiling up nicely there in the semi-final, and obviously Darragh, myself and yourself were lucky enough to be privileged to be in Croker, the heat and all that was there, but we got a bit of shade for a finish, and we didn't get anything like the Munster final in terms of talking points, in terms of spectacular stuff. But I'd say Mr. Cody be happy enough. We got ferocious drama, Derek, to be sitting there and to be told through a phone call from a source that, lads, there's drama in the Dublin setup and it ain't good news, and it's the big C related. It had a bit of kind of everything with the Eoin O'Donnell stuff as well, and who'd mark who, and the James Maher. Sutcliffe completely seeming to backfire from where I was standing and where you were standing. I don't know which of the two of us saw it the best, and yet Cody didn't twist, he stuck, and Maher came good in the second half. So it had a fair bit, and I'd say he's happy enough this morning, the big man.
Yeah, because he's probably more happy even about the narrative being centred on Limerick, and obviously avoiding Limerick now in the semi-final. Not that he'd admit that, but he look, they did their business like they did. I think Brendan Cummins said they do what they usually do. Little fuss. Even when Chris Crummy got the point to make it 9-9, it was a big. The Dubs fans were in full voice. Next minute, Kilkenny had 3 points on the board. They just went about their business really, really efficiently, if you like. The ordinariness, and I mean this with the greatest respect, that the likes of Paddy Deegan and Hugh Lawler bring, and the prerequisites, as I said about the Kilkenny, the honesty, the sincerity, the in-your-face approach sometimes gets guised, I think, with the quality that they have at their disposal. They're a serious team, sex to the forwards, and Killian Buckley and Walter Welsh and Richie Hogan named on the bench didn't even come on the last day, so they still have experience on the bench. Albeit, I still think there's a disparity in quality between the Leinster and Munster Championship. Can Kilkenny win a one-off semi-final against a Munster team? They can, but I think a few of the Munster teams are ahead of the pack when it comes to the overall championship. That's a debate for another day. But look, hats off to Kilkenny for what they've done, and they love hearing that. And they love 3 weeks of a build-up where people talk about the momentum that people have in the qualifiers, and they'll line it up then for 3 weeks and be able to maybe perhaps take a team down. But look, have they found a wing back now, for instance, that can both man mark and score in James Maher? Michael Carey came on, was very good, has legs, crucially, which I felt Kilkenny maybe having at the back. And as I said, the forward line can hurt any back line. You put John Donnelly, TJ Reid, Walter Walsh, even Alan Murphy coming off the bench was very good the last day. Owen Cody, Adrian Mullen seems to be finding his form. And the Mullen one is particularly interesting because he struggled for lots of the league. Now, not struggled in terms of work rate, but struggled in terms of just, getting on the ball and coming up to the pace. But he seems to be kind of coming to the pace and coming to the ball at the right time now. But hugely efficient performance, I suppose I call it. Typical Kilkenny.
Yeah, and the Sunday game is gas, and the boys would have an idea as well. But sometimes you wouldn't know what the other lads' clips would be, what he was doing, and in terms of you pick a Dublin piece, I pick a Kilkenny piece or whatever, and kind of told go away and do your own thing, really. So, we had done a fair bit ourselves on the live show, which is always kind of onto the Sunday night show. But anyway, Tyrrell says, how are you doing, Kilkenny? And I says, I'm doing kind of 3 defensive linchpins. And then, how are you doing? Like, so showed it to him anyway. How are you putting in all those Loughlin fellas for? Loughlin, Gale, Stegan, and I tell you, all politics is local, lads. I tell you, the club is the club is the club, and even within the club, the certain part of the club is the club. He won't mind me telling it, like, putting in all those Loughlin fellas for. But you know, I think I said it last night, maybe that Deegan is really starting to lead the defence, even though you still have Padraig Walsh there, you know. But Deegan is really starting to become that kind of a leader in defence that they need, Mark.
Actually, he's as hard as nails. Like when he clashed into Lee Chin the last day. Like I mean, and like Chin stayed down, your man bounced up like there was nothing wrong with him, and he's definitely packing 2 stone lighter than him. Like, but he just buried him. And you know, when you're taking a yellow like that and you're taking out Wexford's strong man, I mean that shows you a bit of what Paddy Deegan is. But lads, it isn't a surprise to us watching back of how Kilkenny go about their business. No fuss, no palaver, lying in the grass all the time. And the more you write them off, the more these fellas keep coming back. But like the likes of John Donnelly and Martin Keown, Massey Keown, like their ability to win the ball out of the air and win dirty ball is phenomenal. And like if you give the likes of the Owen Cody's, and obviously TJ 34 years of age, like he's like a man possessed at the moment. His touch, his hurling ability and his striking is just phenomenal. But like in the overall context, I thought we were robbed of possibly a better Leinster final on Saturday night with the COVID. I was very disappointed we didn't see Ronan Hayes. Ciarán Callahan obviously would be at the far side of the field, but I was looking forward to Ronan Hayes. And I was also looking forward to the fact that I thought that actually Dublin had a real good chance, Anthony, of putting it up to Kilkenny. And as the course of the game went without the players, the chances that they missed from both freeze and play and poor decision-making, like, would have had Dublin away closer to Kilkenny. I don't think they'd ever have beaten them, but by God, they would have been an awful lot closer. And then you throw a couple of lads in that didn't start with COVID. Owen O'Donnell, obviously, and we had a long discussion there last week about whether Owen O'Donnell would start or not. And I said to you, like, I felt that he might get the benefit of the doubt to try and get his way into a Leinster final. But, like, again, as you can see, like, there's nothing like going into a real match to decide whether a fella's hamstring is up to it or not. So he might have a problem now being back for a fortnight's time, and that was the issue that we discussed last week, whether he would play or not, like, because he now must be a doubt for the quarterfinals. So, but I think overall, I was disappointed that Dublin didn't have a full panel of players. Like if the roles are reversed, if Kilkenny were down 3 or 4 players, would it have made any difference? I don't know. But like, hats off to Kilkenny. They haven't gone away. And you know what, lads? If Limerick and Kilkenny get to an All-Ireland final, I can tell you this much: Kilkenny will die in their boots against Limerick if they get there. It'll be a welter.
He'll be roaring revenge for 73.
Yeah.
But you know, on that, I have the programme here in front of me, TJ, right? No, through COVID and close contacts, right? The number 4 for Dublin, Ciarán O'Callaghan, right, is taken out, and the number 14, Ronan Hayes, is taken out. Now, you just do a quick scan across then to the Kilkenny side. If you took out the number 4, it's one Paddy Deegan, and the number 14 is one TJ Reid. Oh, I'm not saying, but there you go. And you're saying, Mark, would they cope? And I tell you, Fergal Whiteley and Oisin O'Rourke come on in every game for Dublin. Aidan O'Donnell, TJ, Desi asked me last night, how would you cope with hearing that news Sunday morning of a big game? Be it a county final, be it a Munster final for you, be it an All-Ireland semi-final, this was a Leinster final. You're put yourself in Matty's shoes.
Matty Kenny?
Yeah, in Matty's shoes, hearing that news. I'll give you a quick, and then we were about to play Leinster semi-final. I think it was Ireland quarter-final. And Connell, look, thank God he lived, because how he wasn't killed with a motorbike in a van, and he totally in the right, like going to work in Blessington on the Saturday morning. And I got that news about 11 o'clock on the Saturday, and we somehow, Limerick still beat us, but we somehow had our heads right Do you know? No, we won it. We beat Limerick the same day. I think that was the day anyway. Jeez, lads, I hope I'm confused the days now. Yeah, I think it was the day Ryan O'Dwyer got the goals.
The goals, yeah.
And yeah, well, like at least we the day to kind of, you know, I got to Dublin. I wasn't planning to go up until the Sunday morning. I went way up and we had called a meeting and we went through it because he was so pivotal to us. So to hear that all, and it's the new normal, TJ, and this next couple of weeks ahead, like lads, with the numbers, I'll tell you, this could be a maker or a breaker down the stretch in this championship.
Oh, it's massive. And I would agree with you. Like, as a manager, when you're entering into a game like Dublin were, right, you definitely need all the stars to be aligned and you need everything going your way, plus more, to try and have a right go at this Kilkenny setup. I said, like in the preview, the Dublin full backline really impressed me the last day, and they were robbed of two of them like after a couple of minutes. I think it was the very first ball. You could nearly see it on the screen from where we were watching that the hammer was gone again. That's a massive blow. Great man markers there. And then Ronan Hayes has been a massive player for Dublin, no doubt about it. He's been as influential to Dublin possibly as TJ Reid has been to Kilkenny. And it's hard man, leading the line, scoring goals. So yeah, a huge loss. As a manager, you've no choice but to get on with it. You have to show the brave face, but underneath, you know yourself, it's the Swan effect, Dalo, and we know it well. Everything is nice and peaceful and graceful up top, and you're pedaling like fuck underneath. You know what I mean? That's the way it is. Back to the match, like yeah. But I was going to ask you about two things, right? First of all, TJ Reid being 34 then, right? Like we're on about the Sheedy and the Tipperary guys and the age, and then we're talking about how effective and how good TJ Reid at 34 is, and look at the miles and the clock with Ballyhale and Kilkenny over a long number of years. So that argument then kind of brings a different side to it. Says Sheedy is dead right to go with these guys that have the ability and that can do it on a given day. That's number one. And number two, is this Kilkenny team, Dalo, from what I'm looking at, I think it is a little bit different. Is there tactical changes? Like last year in the Leinster final, they came unstuck again with poor use of the ball. It looks like their use of the ball is much better. It looks like they're more tactically aware. It looks like they have more pace in the team. Like I see where DJ Kerry's young fella is saying that he was blessed to get his pace off his mother. So he looked really, 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 really quick. And like there's no doubt, I suppose the younger fellas, what Derek touched on there, like there's no doubt, like the Owen Cody's, the Adrian Mullins, Richie Reeds, they look like, from Cody's point of view, they have a little bit more class than what he had over the last couple of years. And that's no disrespect to what he had, but these boys look a little bit better. So is he building something nice again? And I suppose something a little bit different. Is there plenty pace there? Like now they've won 2 Leinster titles in a row for an ordinary Kilkenny team, right? So yeah. I suppose could you see them live, or could you see those little changes, and maybe tactically that they're differently tuned in?
I like to look at them. I have to say, to your first point, I just would say you are about TJ, and you know he's exceptional, and so are the tip lads. The only thing with the tip lads is you've probably Pádraig, Brendan, Noel, Shamey, Bubbles, all in there, right? So I'd say it's a third-year team. Now there might be, I don't know what, I'm not putting 34 on them all, but they're of a certain vintage and a certain team. So you know you only really have Richie Hogan's there in the subs, which could be very useful for the end of the year, but there isn't that many making their place, let's say, and being mainstays. Like even Colin Finlay is gone, as Mark told us about last week. But no, I just think there is something happening. I agree with Derek. I think the Munster pool is deeper. Obviously, one of the 5 Munster strongholds is going to go next weekend, either Clare or Cork. But I wonder if the draw had gone a little bit different. I suppose one had to go, you know, but I think the pool is deeper, but I do think these fellas can up their game to match anyone. I think Derek's point about maybe can they do it twice would be very, very interesting. Like if they have to produce a massive one to beat a Tip or a Cork or a Clare, let's say, or a Waterford, then can they do it again to beat a Limerick?
But Dalo, to be fair now, like I think if Kilkenny got any of those 3 teams there at the moment, I think they'd fancy their chances against any of those 3 Munster teams, to be honest.
They would not fancy their chances against anyone, Mark. They'd fancy their
I
chances
understand
against
that, yeah, but
Limerick.
I don't think they'd have to be flat to the mat now to beat any of those three teams in the All-Ireland semi-final. I think the big game will be if they get to the final. And on any one-off game, Kilkenny, oh Jesus, they're ferocious. Like they are ferocious. It would be the final now that I am actually looking forward to. Even though I thought Galway are still open to improvement now. There's no point in saying otherwise. They were shocking in Leinster against Dublin. That was totally, nobody saw that performance coming. So that's why this weekend is a big game for them. But
and Cork, what Cork did to Limerick compared to what Limerick did to Tipperary yesterday, you have to say Cork banged there at the moment.
Jesus, you'll be a brave man to be back in Cork at this moment in time now. You know, you just don't know, the consistency, the lack of consistency for the last number of years has just been ferocious. I mean, Clare will surely go into the match as favourites next weekend.
But Dalo, key question for you for Kilkenny, right, is do you think this Kilkenny team is on the way up the curve? I suppose if they find another piece of improvement, my feeling looking at them, and I haven't seen them live, is that they're improving. They're very much heading in the right direction, and I think, Derek, that their curve is definitely on the way up.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I just make reference to the first point, TJ and Sheedy. I think Liam Sheedy, if he had better players than the boys he played him, the lads are the best players in Tippin. That's the reason he plays. And I don't think it's overly loyal or anything. I think they're the best players, and they still are, and I still think they'll have a say. Yes, I still think Tip are our top three team, top in the country. So the second point regarding Kilkenny, I do think their trajectory is up. I think they're improving. I've noticed a few things this year, and as I said it on Saturday, I was sitting behind Cole. You go to play Ballyhale in a challenge here years ago with De La Salle. You turn up at 11 o'clock. You're there with cones all over the field. Ballyhale are at mass. They come along. They basically traipse out the field. They hammer the life out of you, and they go back. Kilkenny's field is now not the cones are the answer, but they're doing conditioning games. They definitely are more up and at it in terms of their preparation. I'd say in the last year or two. It's noticeable. When you go to it over the years, you kind of say we don't do cones, we don't do anything like that. The whole field now is littered with cones. Everything is kind of done down to a T. And the point I made, and I make the same point Saturday, is I think what's happened is the generational players, Henry Shefflin, Eddie Brennan, Richie Power, etc. Sometimes the players that come through then that are still really good players are compared unfavorably to the other players, but it doesn't mean that they're actually better. They're not better players than the other players in other counties, if you know what I mean. The point I'm trying to make. I made an example. We had a couple of guys involved at colleges level here. They were the stars of our team. They never figured a senior in Kilkenny not because they weren't disciplined or anything. They were swallowed up in the system. If have so many players there, and to answer your question, long roundabout way, you have two young hurlers of the year in the last 2 years, in Owen Cody and Adrian Mullen. You have multiple All-Stars and All-Ireland winners in the team, and you also have more pace in the team than they've had over the years. So dangerous opposition. And you know what? I met someone. I was in Tremor yesterday morning. De La Salle were doing a bit of a recovery session yesterday morning, and I was in Tremor yesterday morning. The boys were in the water, and
what were you recovering from, Derek?
They were doing a bit of a training day, and they had a few beers after on Saturday night. To be honest, the usual crack, I suppose. Bonding session, I suppose. A few beers, but they were having a bit of crack, and then I met several people, and they said to me, Jesus, you wouldn't want to rule out Kilkenny, they're dark horses. And I just can't understand if anyone considers to be dark horses. And they're in the semi-final already. They've not walked through Leinster, but even the language that surrounds them, I think, helps. I don't know how they control that kind of language. I said it Saturday, even when you meet them in Kilkenny, they say, I don't know, will we figure this year? I don't know, I'm not sure, will we figure? And before you know it, then you're on the end of a beating on their behalf. Now maybe it's just the tribalism or the border here that I'm listening to it all my life down here. That it's just they have the machine just keeps working, and they'll clip a couple of All-Irelands in the next 10 years. You find when you look back in 10 years' time, they'll be after winning 3 or 4 All-Irelands. You watch it.
It's beginning to feel like that here in Clare. I'm nearly glad I've gone back to West Clare from Clarecastle because I'm a bit further away. I'm nearer to Kerry now than Limerick. Do you know what I mean? But I'll give you one on that, lads. and they love me for saying this now, all my buddies. I love Nedzer now on Twitter, giving it to me later on. But I just think very lucky to get a draw against Wexford in normal time. Wexford beaten by Clare, comfortable enough, right? Dublin were riddled, lads. I don't know how any team would recover from what Dublin went through in the 5-6 hours before the game. So I'm not sure the form, lads. But what I will say, TJ, to your point about are they evolving? Well, look at the subs. Joey Holden doesn't start. Killian Buckley's wearing 21. Conor Fogarty's wearing 22. Walter Walsh is wearing 24. And Richie Hogan's wearing 26. So they are evolving. There's no doubt about that. They're all starters of the past, like.
Coming in, they have offer. Just the Massey-Keoghan point on 51 minutes before the second water break. If you were to pick a piece of play that sums up Cody and Kilkenny, and even the point you made about Limerick, about maybe the intelligence around the pitch, right? Do you know that sense, right, when the turnover is on and you commit the bodies to that area of the pitch, right? It's just, they have this, I don't know, in their DNA, right? Is they sense that match-changing turnover, and they just commit the bodies to it. They absolutely make sure they get the ball, and we had a piece of that again. 3 or 4 fellas right in front of the Hogan stand. James Maher gets a beautiful flick. Paddy Deegan pop pass to Massey-Keoghan over the bar, and you can nearly feel Cody kind of nearly that little spitting in his hand, and he rubbing him and kind of saying, yeah. That's what we're about. Like, it's just in the DNA.
And that you see, that is what makes them so great, right? They mightn't have all these, and Derek, you know all they've won now, and you made great points about the lads that won Carties with G, and they didn't really feature for them ever after, like under 21 or whatever. Like, that's the thing that'll never, even Elaine Aylward said it, she said there's loads of good hurlers that would win skills challenges at home in Kilkenny, but they don't, if you don't match up to the level, and you see, that's why they'll always be there. That's what I think. I'm not so sure they're quite at the level of a Limerick, let's say, maybe even a Galway on a full-flown day now. That's contradicting what happened in the Leinster final last year, but of course they'll fight to the bitter end and they dig out the results. So never changes, lads, and they're they're a joy to behold in lots of ways. The Dubs, just to finish on the Dubs, lads, I just want to say it, and great soldier of mine for the whole 6 years I was up there. What a display from Liam Rush.
Yeah, very good. Excellent.
Warrior, excellent. And you have to say, in fairness to Matty Kinney, Mark, as well, they're better. Like they're
came back for a 65 at one stage, and he held out.
Look, the access there with himself and Conor Burke is very effective there. But look, it's early in the year. People are contemplating whether he should be full forward, whether he's centre forward. Under Pat Gilroy, I think he played full forward. Parnell Park cost Kilkenny a load of damage, and the debate is still there. But if Chris Crumbie was maybe in the half back, so I think he settled on that, and Rush has kind of answered that call, if you like, this year, and firmly made it his own. But and look, you know him better, Anthony, but seems a good fella as well. Just without even knowing body language, and just really a winner, I suppose. And if you can keep going in those situations where 8 or 9 points down, it's a great sign. Yeah, real leader, and Sutcliffe. I think it's a great sign of Matty's management, the way Rush and Sutcliffe for Hurling, Crummy, they're around a long time. Like Chris Crummy's on that panel since 13, and they're driving it on. That's always a great sign, I think, when the older lads are in with a manager and he's in his third year and they're driving it on. And I actually think there's a big kick in them in the quarter-final. I think they'll feel this one got away because not really their fault, but by God, they've one more chance and the COVID thing will be over. And if O'Donnell makes it, if he didn't do damage, and that would be hopefully what the last message when he was going out in that field was on, if you feel a thing, put your hand up. So hopefully, Mark, made that call. Yeah,
that's exactly it, Anthony. And if you had your own O'Donnells and your Keane O'Callaghan's and your own Hayes in from the start, I think that sends out a very strong message to the rest of the players as well. And they were just a smidgen off, even without the players on Saturday night. Like Donald Buck missed a couple of uncharacteristic frees and a couple of chances from play. Chris Cummy had a goal opportunity, and there was a Kilkenny player came from And like the week previous, he'd got the goal, like, he was in the right position and he hit the ball wide, like had nothing from it. And it was a real opportunity to get a score, but it just made a lot of poor decisions on the night. And they will be an awful lot better. I like when they sit back and analyse the game themselves and their own performance. I think they would be in a happier place, and they will be a threat for anybody in the quarterfinal at this stage.
Yeah, I think so. And the fitness levels are so high. I think dangerous game, and you could have teams talking about we might get the Dublin side of it. Perception and all that. You could have a bit of that. And I think
you will have
they've been for a rude awakening. They've been for a rude awakening.
Yeah.
I do think.
Yeah, better than what people give them credit for.
Yeah. Lads, we two huge qualifiers. Derek, we were sitting in after watching. Well, I got to watch it on the screen down underneath. The lads, they came up with a little telly from somewhere, and we got to watch Clare and Wexford. It was great. Enjoyed it. But we were sitting there. He's in again.
He is.
Come here. We were listening. We came back out anyway, and then next thing someone said, and I had tuned out a little bit, obviously, because of the Clare thing and trying to see that over the line in my own bulb. But then news came in, it was level in Nolan Park, and we were kind of looking at each other, and I was looking at you going, Jesus. And it was helter-skelter, and I had to go back to the car to get clothes, I think. And I got on Radio 1 and running back to the car, and the heat, Jesus, the sweat levels was not meant it. But it was a scary enough one for Waterford, and having watched the highlights package last night, an extended one, in fairness to what they could show last night. Like, people be giving out about the Sunday game, lads, but like the amount of stuff they're trying to get in last night, you've no idea. Like, there's no time in 2 hours, like, for the amount, the busiest weekend of the year in GA, just to try and explain that. There would be massive room for a Monday night or Tuesday night analysis show, wouldn't there? Carragher and Neville, like, to do that stuff. But Derek, it's funny. Where's the Waterford form? Where are we at? Is Liam in second year syndrome? I went through it in Dublin. I don't know.
Look, a couple of things there, I suppose. And I don't think so. I don't think it's second year syndrome, because a lot of optimism here on the back of the league performances against Tip and Limerick in particular. And even the 25 minutes of the first half against Galway, where Waterford actually ripped asunder the Galway defence. So that optimism obviously then, it didn't materialise with the performance against Clare. And the general feeling was that was flatness. We just, we didn't turn up and we couldn't get our game going. And, I think the narrative surrounding that afterwards should have been really how good Clare were set up and how tactically aware they were and blah, blah, blah. So, actually, I watched the first half myself on the GA Go on the laptop, and I had the mobile hotspot on outside Croke Park, and I was watching the first half, and Waterford had 12, 13 wides. They were 8 points, 9 points up, and it was one of those games where you could be 20 points up at halftime with the due respect, and then they got not dragged in, because that's unfair on Laois. They Paddy Purcell actually, won 4, and the Laois forwards gave the boys a bit of trouble. A couple of things happened. Like, Conor Prunty got 70 minutes into the legs. Jamie Barron got 12 minutes into the legs. But there was an unusual, I suppose, structure to the team. Shane Bennett played at 7, and Kevin Moran played at 12. Paddy Curran played in the middle of the field. So there was a difference in terms of the setups, in terms of the team. So it was that's the probably conundrum now for Liam heading into the Galway match, in that, did I get enough from the relocation of fellas? Austin was at full forward, and Austin scored 5 points to play at wing back against Clare, if you like, or 4 points to play. So that's where the anomaly lies now, the difficulty. So form, I'd accept that, and accept Mark's point he made earlier about Waterford. We're normally at our most dangerous when there's kind of when there's a doubt, when there's the perception is around Galway will be a wounded animal, etc. And we'll be heading into a game now where Galway will be hottest of favourites. And call me the eternal optimist, but I fancy it then, not based on form, but I fancy it based on Waterford getting a one-off performance right against Galway, but albeit with a certain doubt around the form element of it. But knowing the Waterford psyche and knowing the player's psyche, I think they'll fancy it.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think maybe Shane O'Neill might have preferred Clare from that point of view. you know, that he'd have seen more and he'd have known the kind of the depths that to go to maybe to win. I know we could say at the end of the day, Waterford had to do something similar, but Clare, obviously, that was the huge one, build up head-wise, everything. Mark, a lot of talk in Laois that maybe after the Wexford game, I don't know how true it is. You're hearing it, you know. The players had a meeting, went to Cheddar, said, "Look, we want to throw away the sweeper system, whatever, and we want to push up." Well, whatever system they played against Wexford was not even. There was no sweeper element. It was just passive defending. There was no one. There was 12 lads back and no one going to the ball.
Yeah,
but obviously
they gave away the ball. Yeah.
And they've turned. I mean, I know they have a massive one now. The relegation playoff is
against Westmeath.
That's massive, but they've turned their season around something savage.
Yeah, like it's phenomenal. Like, I mean, you couldn't have scripted where Laois are right now 3 weeks ago. Like, after the Wexford game, everybody said, look, and look, I had a couple of lads in the fantasy hurling team from Antrim, and I said, I'm guaranteed 2 more games here. I was shocked, to be honest with it, that they got over Antrim. But I was more even shocked over the weekend that the performance they put in against Waterford, because I would have fancied Waterford would have beaten them by the same score, possibly Wexford them previously. So it was all going swimmingly well, I suppose, up to halftime. And you're right, I was listening to Kieran O'Connor on the radio, Derek, and I think he was on with Shane Ahern, and they just said, look at halftime, look, if Waterford get a couple of goals here now at the start of the second half, this game is over. And again, I'm going back to the psychology, the Liam Sheedy thing at halftime, that they were in such a strong position at halftime. Do you actually feel like the game is done? Because this is the second game over the weekend whereby a team that was well down at halftime have come out and given a massive performance. In Limerick, they won. And possibly just Laois, like, they hit the front in the 65 minutes they were in front. And I suppose it was, I won't say lack of ability that didn't get them over the line. That would be totally disparaging. It's just maybe the know-how, and maybe the Waterford potentially are the better of the two teams, that Waterford were able to see it out. But it was a massive scare for Waterford. I'd say it'll be very easy to get lads back down to training this week in Waterford, but you'd have to take credit, or Laois will have to take credit from that game, that they put in a massive, massive shift. But how can you explain, Anthony, their form from 3 weeks ago to the... And you can say the system and the 12 players behind the ball and all that kind of stuff, but they were very poor in the league as well. So they have produced 2 massive performances against Antrim and Waterford that nobody could have seen coming. But, like, the interesting game now is going to be against Westmeath next week, and can they get it back up for 3 weekends in a row? It's a big ask.
Yeah, it'll also be a big ask for Westmeath. Obviously, they've achieved the primary goal, but they might want out of Division 1.
They'll be bouncing into the match next week with a trophy in the bag, like.
Yeah, that's true. To get them off the sauce is the biggest thing this week. But no, there's good hurlers in Laois. I think, you know, we always on about, can we get another few counties up there with the Carlows, the Antrims, obviously even the Kildare, and that was a bit disappointing to see them going down in the Joe McDonagh. But I think that Laois have the best quality of player maybe to bridge that gap. Obviously, Offaly will be back, I think. But I think good hurlers in Laois, the buy-in sometimes doesn't be there. And we saw when Eddie got the buy-in, what maybe the potential is there. So I think the gap could be bridged easier by those guys than a lot of counties. But look, it's a big one Saturday. Cheddar said it last night, I think, when the interview was just shown last night, obviously. But Saturday is huge, he said, for us now, because we've retained Leinster Championship status. But unless we get Division 1 hurling next year, we won't be ready for it. I think that's a huge point. And look, we'll be interested to see what happens. Obviously, Saturday is going to be huge. Obviously, my focus, I suppose, TJ, and a lot of the hurling focus, I suppose people did feel that Waterford, there was an element that we'd both provincial finals, but we'd nearly a bigger game in Thurles in one way. Well, as someone, the Kilkenny boys, I think, said it, maybe, I think it might have been even Henry or someone said it, that one of these two teams was going to be out. Whoever lost the Munster final or Leinster final wasn't going to be out. So it was a kind of the first real do or die of the big guns, and a big day for Brian Lohan. A big day at the end of the week, I would have felt, TJ, for Clare hurling. and we've that 20 game tonight I'm looking forward to. Unfortunately, you weren't forced to play Cahill or Colin, and Mark Rogers is starting now off the bench for our lads, and Keane Galvin is out injured, my club mate, who's another huge loss. So hopefully, but like it was a tough week with the minor match and everything, and the boys gave a huge response.
Unbelievable, brilliant start. Again, like I probably have said this already, I don't think Lohan and the boys tactically get enough credit. They started TK in the middle of the field. Obviously, Daly had a plan for him. They kind of scuppered him early doors. They got the jump. They're getting an awful lot of decisions right. And obviously, we know what happened in the tip game, and like who knows what will happen with that decision. But I said that Lohan has definitely won the war here, right? Like last year they beat them. There was question marks about Wexford. Wexford no excuses this time. I thought tactically Wexford's setup early on here was questionable. And I also just listened to Sunday game last night, heard Davy saying that outside of the first 13 or 14 minutes, he said he felt he controlled the game. I didn't think Wexford controlled the game from their home. I thought Clare managed it well. Yeah, they came under pressure before half time at the start of the second half, but they weathered the storm nicely. They got their lead back. And you'd have to say, from Lohan's point of view, massive results. And like we were on about Swan earlier on, like there has to be inside that line somewhere. We were actually talking at home on Saturday, right, when the match was on, right? It was ideal for Lohan on the day, right, just to wear the bib. No t-shirts, just the bib. We were kind of pitching him on the store bib, right? It was that much of a war, right?
And walk up towards the other dugout.
Yeah. And he had that sort of a feel of it. And I'd say that he was on fire inside to get one over on Davy again. Massive result for Clare, massive result for him. But in fairness to him, like what he's done over the last 2 years in terms of getting this team going forward, getting them playing. I've said before that they were kind of a one-man show with TK. He didn't have his best day, and the rest of them came up trumps. What a start by Cahill Malone, what a game. So all around, you'd have to say, really, really positive. And a lot to look forward to, and a lot of young fellas in this team, Dalo, and a nice structure. And even on the day, I'd probably say even John Conlon didn't even have his best game, and they still came up trumps. Like so, huge credit due to them. I forecast that maybe Davy would have gone up afterwards and given him an old tap. Yeah. I think he would have got a lot more kudos. The reason my thinking was behind it was one of the guys was going out. They mightn't get the opportunity to play against each other again. There's probably a squabble or a row in every GA club in the country between characters. And I think that this was an opportunity for the loser to go up. You didn't have to have a conversation, just to say well done and just leave it at that and move on. It didn't happen. That's where my forecast was coming from. I know Davy has since said that he'd sit down with him, but I think it was an opportunity missed. I think he would have got a lot of kudos for the other shite that he was going on about there, about his week and this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, that's part and parcel of the GA. It's not nice. He knows that, but he plays it masterfully well. He deflected away from Wexford, I thought, beautifully.
Yeah, you call it shite. I want to say this because we hadn't time to talk about it last night anyway. I was asking Desi where we're going there on his speech, and we haven't time, Dalo. That's the reality. 2 pieces of analysis each and moving on. I suppose we have to talk about it somewhat. I'm completely with Davy in this in terms of online bullying and that sort of stuff. There needs to be legislation for this stuff. I'm completely with the guy on this. Now, I have been critical. Lots of guys have been critical. In my opinion, we massively and quickly need major structural and personal change in Clare GA right from the top, right, starting at the top. We need it, and we need it immediately. At the end of this year, we'll see out the year now, because it's July and our hurlers are going well. But I think I'm going to say that. We need that. We need new thinking. We need new personnel. If that's bullying and upsetting people, I'm not bullying anyone as far as I'm concerned. That's just my opinion, and I'm giving my opinion. And I'm as entitled to anyone to give my opinion. And Davy told us all that he played more than anyone for Clare. And by God, I made my debut with him, and I managed him in his last year that he played. I think he finished up the following year with Tony Considine. So I'm going to give that opinion. That's my opinion. I've nothing against anybody. I've worked with those people. I've played with that man. What a goalkeeper. What a leader. What an inspiration. But look, we need change. That's my opinion. We need to look at our structures. I won't back down on that. And that's my opinion. I do agree with him totally. This online bullying, we need legislation. It's come from every sport.
Yeah, but time and a place, Dalo. I didn't think that this was the right time for it. I thought I deflected away from the game. Look, anybody who's been involved in GAA, I've fallen out with families myself in Garryspillane because of decisions you made in the team. Unfortunately, it's part and parcel of it. I thought to get a chance to bury the hatchet. Even when I was Limerick manager, I had a fella here nailing me left, right and centre who wouldn't know the front of a pair of hogs from the back. Do you know what I mean? That's just the way it is. Do you know what I mean? But I just thought there was a good opportunity here for like a family kind of falling out, which is someone who kind of is in the distance because you made a decision. But these are two guys who brought Clare to a level together. You know what I'm saying? There obviously was a good, tight kind of relationship there, fullback and goalkeeper. You just don't like to see it. And I would have loved to have seen Davy just tap him at the end of the game and just go away. I thought it would have sent a massive message for him personally and for the wider world.
And look, I'm bringing myself into being a Wexford fan, okay? And I'm after watching my team bound out to Clare 2 years in a row, and I'm listening to this speech that seems to be, fairly rehearsed. Maybe he's such a year put down that it was off the cuff. But I'm saying, where has he been thinking all week? For my team, and I wonder about that.
And maybe he should be wondering why he was leaving Lee Chin and Conor McDonald and Rory O'Connor so far out the field, and at a lot of stages, no forward inside the 45-yard line. I mean, that was, to me, when you have three forwards like that, you have to keep at least one of them in around the square or somewhere close to the action anyway. I mean, we often discuss that sometimes some of these teams get caught up in tactics and which game plan are we using now, but they just looked a small fraction off the pace on Saturday, I would have felt. And again, somebody if Rory O'Connor's goal chance went in and Cathal Malone's didn't go in, there was a 6-point swing at the start of the game. And to be fair, I suppose, Clare did leave 1-7 to 1 point at one stage. Wexford probably did win the rest of the game, but you're right, TJ. I didn't think that they controlled the game. I thought they were always chasing the game, and at no stage did I think they were the better team. I thought Clare were by far the better team on the day. But yeah, the speech after the game for me turned into be the Davy speech rather than the Wexford speech, and maybe it's for another day. I mean, anybody listening in wants to hear what he felt about the game that has just been played, and not maybe the rigmarole that's going on behind the scenes. And, he's been very, very good for GA in terms of, bringing something different. But I wouldn't be I'm not a fan of his antics. I'll be straight up with you. And I said last week it would pain me to see Wexford winning because of his antics. I don't like his antics. I'll be straight with you. And I would be 100% behind you, Dalo, for Clare's sake. It's Clare Hurling we're talking about now, maybe, that you do need a change at the top. There's no doubt about it. And anybody who's been there for the decades that Pat has been there for, and I know he's done fantastic work for Clare, but this thing moves on. And we've had the discussion that the players should be moved. It's not the players need to move Pat Fitzgerald. It's the clubs need to move Pat Fitzgerald. It's the delegates and the clubs and the delegates go in with the club's wishes, not the delegates' own personal wishes, because we all know what happens with delegates that have been inside for 20 or 30 years inside in any county board. They're very, very loyal to the secretary. But it's the clubs need to stand up here and give a clear message that there is change required as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they're the tickets and tay guys, TJ, are they? They're getting away from the political side of it. Leave it Clare gone on. I'm delighted. 10 different scorers there. I remember, I think Shane sent me a text message, Shane McGrath, and I've given him a bit of a doon on here over. He says, if anything happens, TK, will you turn up in the championship? Fellas are beginning to Rory Hayes man of the match. Conor Cleary outstanding, I thought. Right up on it. Ryan Taylor really beginning to step up into this thing. The two subs, young Rodgers, loads. Ed McCarthy again. Malone, phenomenal. Malone was just, if he didn't take a few shot options on, Cahill, 1-1 will do now. Let it in. Shanny, but what a guy, lads. I've been critical of him 3-4 years ago. He's been brilliant for the last 3 years for Clare.
Yeah, and I've been openly a big fan of his over the last 2 years, because I think when you're involved in that setup, you have this player that gives everything you have, kind of Bill Cooper-ish with Cork, has like that, fits into that category. Jake fits into the category with Waterford at times, where you have this fella in the camp gives it everything. So yeah, delighted to see him. Yeah, a couple of things there. I suppose, even if you look at the setup against Waterford initially, with Kelly and Shanahan inside and Ian Galvin coming out the field from the corner, they changed it up for the tip game where you had the three boys inside. Then you have Kelly relocated to the middle of the field the last day against Wexford. We'd be marveling if some other manager was implementing these particular changes, which by Kelly being in the middle of the field, and it kind of almost said to the Aidan McCarthy, to the Ryan Taylors, to the Ian Galvins, to the Shanners, right, step up without Tony now. And it was, the catalyst for them stepping up is almost Tony's relocation to somewhere else, and I think that helps. It also, interesting enough, Lohan is saying to himself, right, who's likely to take Kelly? Like Shane Reck, will I discommode Wexford by Shane Reck having to come to the middle of the field when he's used to being cornerback, So I think there's lots in that to answer your question. Just to go back to the point, just to make my own point on the Davy incident, I suppose. TJ is right in terms of the handshake. What I was thinking, is it possible if he hadn't commented on the Clare situation publicly and then go about his business afterwards, instead of, he might have been saying, look, I'm not going to shake hands because every photographer, every journalist in Ireland is looking for this reconciliation in public, right? So maybe I could do it quietly, phone call on Sunday morning, listen, whether win or lose, phone call on Sunday morning, look, Brian, I didn't shake your hands yesterday because I didn't want it to become a big public, show, if you like, of reconciliation. Let's meet up over the next few days. Nobody need know anything about it, blah, blah, blah. And look, but when any conflict, compromise is part of a situation on both sides. If your father, right, just put yourself in a situation, if your father was being roundly criticised, maybe even criticised in the right or wrong, you're going to hurt. You're going to hurt. Like, if your flesh and blood is being criticised for anything, no different than my poor late father, you're on the way out of a beaten Tipperary would be hammered us by 20 points in the Munster final at 16, and you're on the way out and you're getting hammered. And TJ was through similar situations, Anthony and Mark, all through similar situations. You're going to hurt, and your flesh and blood will hurt more than anybody. So I can understand the build-up of pain, anguish, hurt when you see your father being subjected to it. But the point that everyone is trying to make is it's nothing personal. It's actually nothing personal. It's the need for a change. It's the need for difference, which we all have to encounter. And sometimes when you see those things coming, you need to kind of negotiate it yourself before they happen, before you get into a situation where you're in the conflict. And that's the point I make on that. Like, I know the way journalists operate. Some of them would have gone after that story straight away. Tell us about the year you've had. And, they feed into that and it becomes the narrative afterwards. So I understand the points that you're trying to make. My advice, not that Davey would listen to my advice, would have been park it, say nothing about it. Praise Brian Lohan to the heights for what he's done with Clare. Wish Clare well in the future, and the concentration should be on Wexford. And then in the privacy of your own conversation with Brian or the likes of huge figures in Clare, what can't be discounted is Davy's contribution to Clare over the years, even as a manager and a player. And does he have something to offer when the reconciliation process begins to the new Clare as well? And sometimes the healing process can involve people that have been involved in the split. You only have to look at Northern Ireland to see the example of that politically, lads. And whilst people might think that parallel is different, in many ways it's the same. The politics of GA is as hard to understand as the politics of the North at times. So that's the answer in your question on TK. The pressure is taken off, but the Davy situation, hurt can linger, like for any of us, and people have a different way of kind of espousing it, I suppose.
Yeah, and like I concur with everything you said, Darren, and we can understand it. And TJ said it even there, falling out with families nearly at club level. We all have.
Yeah.
It is not personal, though. You will feel it personally, but it isn't personal. Like, I mean, I was captain for 8 years under Pat, let's say, and you do a bit more as captain, let's say, dealing with the secretary who was kind of handling things, and I was manager for 3 years, and I couldn't have had a better working relationship, you know. But I just feel the time we need fresh thinking, fresh voices. That's my point on it. And it's not personal with me anyway. I can say that 100% hand on heart. We'll leave it there, lads, because I think the Clare Hurlers now want to drive on. And there was a big 8:30 there that I set the phone. I came home there at 2:30 this morning down the road. The car telling me I was fatigued about 3 times. How in the Jesus does your car know you're fatigued? Would someone tell me?
Was there a wall there?
The cross the white line there, hit a few cut ties.
When I got home then, of course the usual then, no sleeping me when I got in home then, and the car telling me I was fatigued. Oh no, I better not turn on the telly now. What did I do? Make a few notes for the podcast. Jesus, might as well fill a glass of red, sure, to help me nod off. Next thing before you know it, like it's 10-4. You're still sipping the glass of red. Now, honestly, no, you're fresh as a daisy, but
no, it's made.
You have the phone. Oh no, I had the notes done because I didn't turn on the telly. And next thing the phone goes at 8:15, and you're going, oh Jesus, I'd sleep for another 3 or 4 hours. What's the story? The draw. Over Pádraig Lodge Radio 1 comes on like, and Larry McCarthy, fair play team. He pulled it out, marked away. We just wanted it, the two of us, didn't he?
Cork and Clare. The good old days, huh? Back to the good old days. No doubt about it. Yeah.
Man, don't give us the poor mouth now. Give us the take. Come on.
Look, I think, is it even money your choice, I'd say, probably, or Cork might end up slight favourites. I don't know why, but anyway.
I don't know. What's the history probably Cork, is it?
Well, the recent history is...
Last Robin match, didn't they?
Yeah. Say that again?
Bad day. But after 13, Cork gave Clare an awful time. In Munster in particular, like, do you know, they couldn't beat Cork, I think. 3 or 4 years. Yeah. Oh, but then they beat them both minutes. No, remember Cork had to come up, and Limerick did Cork the favour by playing the weakened team against Tip, and Clare beat Cork above an Innis. Remember the desperate rain? Yeah. It was 19, was it?
Yeah, but I think am I right in saying in championship? Was that a championship match?
That was championship.
Right. Okay. Like I suppose the inconsistencies in Cork is going to be the big issue, and Clare, to be fair, have hauled out of their skins in the 3 games so far. Take the James Owens incident out of the Tip game now, like, for a second. Like, Clare have hauled really, really well for 2.5 games, I suppose. Like, this is only Cork's second match. It's going to be Clare's 4th game. That's a big help to any team going into another championship match. And I know there's a number of injuries and stuff like that in Cork that I suppose they will be expected to come right and stuff like that. But I'd be very tentative, Dalo. I'd be very tentative. And
where's that Corkness gone, Marco? Where has it gone? Like, that was kind of rising there for a while, Dalo, wasn't it?
What we'd be at them, like, we won all weekend above and Dolan there, like, how we be winning the Hurling?
No, we'll hold our powder dry now for the time being. But and there was the whole pile of new players that come into it. Like,
what about that one? Teddy Mack won 2 in a fortnight.
That's right. Yeah.
Just regular, give me that one. Like, you're wrong. One Ireland's in 80 years, and Teddy Mack won 2 in a fortnight, kid.
I'm going to say this one tentative now.
Yeah, you seem to have found a good bit against Limerick, though, in terms of stopping Hago, stopping Morrissey. You got a lot of things right. Full back line, very good.
Yeah, but I suppose the one thing you talk about was John Kiley did with Gillan over the weekend by dropping him. There would be a strong feeling in Cork that Hoggy should have been withdrawn with 15 minutes to go, and Declan Dalton should have been brought on, particularly with the freeze, the way they were going. I mean, Patrick is a very good player now and has been a fantastic player. And it's probably going back to your point that sometimes there are players that can't be taken off, and Patrick is probably one of those fellas. But Cian Kingston did it 4 or 5 years ago, where Patrick went through a poor spell as well, and he dropped him for league matches, and he responded in kind. And there would be a strong feeling that maybe he should have been withdrawn. in the first round against Limerick. But you're right, we got a lot of things right, but I still think at any stage during the Limerick game, if Cork came anywhere close to Limerick, Limerick would have put the foot in the pedal and went away and won Dalo. Like they still won by 8 points in the end. And it's a bit like a cat and a mouse, like, you know, I'll leave you go and then I'll drag you back in. Like, so I don't know. We're very inconsistent, Anthony. I'd love to tell you that, you know, I can see a big barnstorming performance coming from Cork, but you know, they just haven't done it in a good number. And like in any one-off situation, they're very, very good. But it's trying to get a consistency of performance is the biggest thing. And all we're really looking for is that fellas will go out and play with their heart in their sleeve and give it 100%. And you know, the defense was good the last day, but like they still would be very, very much. There still is an awful lot of question marks about their performance. And you know, I think Clare will probably start the slight favourites. I would suspect.
Yeah, I take you up on the Hoggy one there if you want to give him, if Kieran wants to make the call for Saturday to leave him off. I take you up on that one. It'd be a good time. And look, it could really stand you in the coming years, and I'd be all for that, you know.
That bird has flown, that opportunity has flown, and I'd say, look, Cian will have spoken to Patrick about his performance, and he will be asking to double down as the captain of the team now and as the leader of the team, that he would expect you know, an 8 or 9 out of 10 performance out of him. And you know, look, that's the reality. He's a very, very experienced player, and he's been fantastic for Cork. But he just needs to, like, I'm looking at the TJ Rees and I'm looking at the Tony Kellys, I'm looking at the Lee Chins. They're consistent every day they go out. They're consistent in their performance. Like, to think that Patrick didn't score from play the last day is hard to believe. And you know, when I see TJ Reid scoring the penalty on Saturday night when Aidan Nolan holds the Hurley left over right, and what did Reid do? He went to the opposite side. Just couldn't understand Patrick's decision to try and beat Quaid on his hurling side from a penalty. That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So, you know, back to basics, keep it simple, and go about winning your game, keeping it simple. In my view, would be what I would be advising the players.
TJ, it's like the deaf dog, isn't it? This one.
It is. I think two things.
That's hard to call for anyone that's not familiar with the TJ.
I think there's opportunity for all 4 teams in these 2 games. I think that both winners will have a nice opportunity, like facing like Tip, we'll say, after the beating they got, and possibly a Dublin. So there's big opportunity for all 4 teams here. There are question marks for me around Cork, Galway and Waterford. Maybe so less questions about Clare. We kind of know what they're about now. We know the way they'll set up. Cork were very much strategic in their setup. It was very much Limerick focused in what they did. It was a game set to counteract Limerick's way. So what do they do now, and can they improve? That's a big, big question for Cork. What sort of first 15? Are we looking at something similar again? Tactically, their puckouts to a degree worked reasonably well against Limerick. They're not going to face that Limerick half-back line, or let's say the Kyle Hayes effect and all that, right? So how do they go about their business? There's questions there. Can they answer them? Absolutely. And have they the power? I think they have players. Like winning the under-20s was big. There's a bit of a pep in their step in the young fellas. What does Kieran do now? I think there's questions around that Cork setup this week. It is a difficult match to call. Where does Lohan apply TK this time around? And as I said, and Derek has touched on it as well, I think Brian and his backroom team tactically have got an awful lot of the decisions right. So where are they going to attack this Cork outfit? Could they play like maybe TK maybe inside in the corner or something and bomb ball in there? So it is an intriguing game, and it is a hard game to call. I will agree with you there. And I would say even the bookies will have this tight. But maybe there's something around this a boy Lohan kind of chant for the summer, Dalo, and there's a bit of kind of momentum behind it now, and you can nearly even feel kind of people getting behind him and driving it. So I would say momentum-wise, it's with Brian. The question for Cork is what are they coming with tactically? How are they setting their forwards up? I was impressed enough on the last day against Limerick. I was questioning on 55 minutes if they had got 1 or 2 to freeze, or maybe the Cadigan Pint or 1 or 2 others. Could they have really thrown it at Limerick, or what did Limerick have in the locker? And I suppose we're probably going to really only find the answer to that now, right? They've had a little bit of time off. They got the break with the draw. it's a good opportunity. So I think we'll find out an awful lot about Cork this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, I suppose after the league or just near the end of the league, maybe people kind of took a bit of notice when Clare beat Kilkenny. I suppose, you know, that would have been the general kind of perception. But at before that last round of the league, probably people were saying Cork, very solid league, and Clare had not maybe perceived weaker division as well of it. But things have changed a good bit. But you know yourself, you can only, well, hopefully not now, but it's hard to keep going to the well. And like, whereas I'd say Waterford didn't massively have to go to the well. They probably did. 5 minutes to go and you're down a pint. You have to dig deep. But overall, Clare had to really build up and go to the well to beat Wexford. Will it take a bit out? I got the feeling off you Saturday evening, maybe the shot might help in actual fact.
Yeah, you know, it could catch up in week 3. I think the momentum that they have and the clarity they have in what they're doing, it probably gives them an advantage on Cork. Now, I'm going to contradict that by saying that I think Cork will win. I know, but I think Clare have the advantage in terms of just, and I'm going to actually say they'll have an consistent performance. You know, I just think they'll bring one of the, you know, I think they have to. You know, I think I'll go back in the Cork situation first. Like, started the league brilliantly against Waterford, like real intent in their play. The second last game against Limerick, when they went down with kind of and we've done it ourselves before, like 8 or 9 kind of new guys, kind of having a look at Limerick almost kind of in terms of, and then they started well against Galway, and Galway kind of put them to the sword in the second half again. So, you know, whereas in retrospect now, and I fucking did it myself in 18 with our approach to the league, Kieran might have been better trying to win every game of the league as in as hard a fashion as he could, like trying to go at after every game, you know, and so the momentum that Clare have, I don't think they'll be tired. I don't think they'll be kind of, you know, playing on the fact that they've been out 3 weeks in a row or 2 weeks in a row. The motivation for Clare against Waterford was different in that it was kind of Waterford were favourites and Clare were coming in on the back of kind of, you know, there's a bit of acrimony there and behind the scenes, blah, blah, blah. Against Tip, they had the kind of Aidan McCarthy situation to fuel their performance. I think against Wexford, I think behind the scenes, he also had the COVID cases, the Wexford Clare situation during the league game. And I think that was a bit of fuel there as well. I'm not sure where the fuel comes this week, if you like, for the you know, for the cause, if you like, if you want a better word. And I think Cork, I think they nearly have to produce on Saturday. You know, I think they have to produce something. And, you know, if you have Robbie O'Flynn, Shamie Harnedy, Shane Kingston, Patrick Horgan, Alan Cadigan possibly back fifth, 5, that's 5 or 6 forwards. I'm not sure. I'm missing an obvious for young Barrett, I suppose.
Jack O'Connor. Shane Barrett. Yeah. I
still think there's a forward line there that can cut any defence to ribbons when they're on it. And, you know, I don't know. We're guessing, I suppose. To come back to what Mark said, we're guessing. Clare with the form and with the clarity of their thinking. Cork with doubts and inconsistency. But yet I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with the fact that they're going to produce.
Okay. I think I see where you're coming from. Yeah. Go on, Marco.
Well, like I've doubted Clare all year long, right? And but I'd have to say they're getting a consistency of performance that, you know, you'd have to say, you know, that Clare are going to turn up, and don't want to be disparaging by saying they weren't going to turn up, but like we've seen it for Cork for just too long that they don't turn up in games, whereas Clare are turning up consistently now. I suppose you look on the Tony Kelly thing. Like if Tony Kelly goes on the inside, Sean O'Donnell will pick him up, and if you go up midfield, John Mellerick will pick him up. So Cork won't have to change their team a whole pile, or they won't have to make any major adjustments, I would think. So is there a possibility Tony Kelly could end up centre forward?
That's the obvious. That's the obvious for me.
To me, that's probably where they're going to play him, because they said Matt Coleman won't follow him. Like so, and then Cork have got to stick or twist to what are they going to do? Are they going to put John Mellerick do what they did against Cian Lynch? So, but like, and we've already said it. But like what we've already said, like, is that Clare are no longer a one-man band. That all the other players are standing up and being counted, and that is great credit down to Brian and the Clare management and the players. And the performances they're getting from the team. So, like I look, if Cork turn up and play at 100%, right, and get everything right, I think Cork will win the game. But if Cork are any bit off, Clare will win that game. That would be my view.
Dalo, I was going to ask you, and Derek, probably more recent times, it definitely happened to me, is that, for Cork's first round of the championship, when they put so much energy and effort tactically into the plan to beat Limerick, right? I found that sometimes that the next game suffers because you don't want to put the same kind of work into that, and then there could be a little bit of mixed messaging, and there could be a little bit of a difference in the plan. So I think that's important for Cork to get that right. And I think if they get that piece right, like you would give them a big chance because there is scores in the forward line. But I think that's a big one for them. Yeah,
that is always, and they've had a bit of time. That they've no real excuse to the draw. They've had the time. They saw the draw coming out. Clare Wexford. They could sit back and say, "Well, we'll either be playing, who they'll be playing Waterford or Clare." They've had that luxury. I don't think they have an excuse on that front. I see where you're coming from, though. I've been that soldier as well. Yeah, I think momentum might carry the day. I'm just hoping that. I honestly do think if that Cork forward line, as you named them there, Derek, if they click into gear, any team is in a bit of bother with them, and serious bother maybe. So I'm just hoping our boys have new confidence. I think if I take a guy like Ryan Taylor, did I think Ryan Taylor would be on the championship team? Did I know he had the ability to perform at this level? I did. Did I think he'd embrace it and say, I can play inter-county championship and excel at it? I wasn't so sure. I think he's feeling that now, which is huge. The other one is fascinating as well. I think Waterford always, and Derek, I know this will pain you a bit, Waterford kind of always fancy themselves a bit against Galway. They haven't delivered. Galway haven't delivered either now from where we had them. It was a major flop like against Dublin. Dublin played well now. I'd be give Dublin more. I said it straight out. I thought the attitude was a bit we'll blow this crowd out early and we'll win it and we'll drive on to the Leinster final. And just thought it was off a bit. I'm not blaming anyone. Whether a couple of players decided that, whether the management were a bit, I don't know. But there's a good bit more in that Galway team on song. So it is an intriguing one. I mean, both of those teams, there's a possibility they could have met in the All-Ireland final last year. With 10 minutes to go in the Limerick Galway semi-final, sure, there was every chance they'd meet in the All-Ireland final. So it's to meet now in a second round qualifier is massive for both counties. They're saying massive for Cork. I think this is massive for both.
Yeah,
Derek.
It is. Derek,
it is.
Going to go to Derek.
No, it's
the record. Would I be right about the record there? That the Waterford people.
The only time we've lost in championship to Galway is the actual final of 17. Yeah, we are gas man.
No, I didn't. But that match.
No, I'm only joking.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm only joking. So I think general feeling is that'll be on the Thurles here as well, and Waterford would like Thurles and Galway traditionally, going back to the Kilkenny hammering a few years ago. That gave me a long time ago when Cody was like a lunatic or one of the game. I remember that Galway wouldn't like going to Thurles traditionally, but we'd fancy it. And I look, to be honest with you, Anthony, I wasn't on the Galway buzz as well during the year. I looked at the semi-final of Galway and Limerick last year, and the general narrative is Galway were the closest to them, and that was well borne out in scores. But I think bar the 10 minutes of that Limerick Galway semi-final, I think Limerick just weren't clinical. Like, the huge amount of possession chances just happened. They left them in the game for a lot of the game. Now Galway played well in the league, etc. But I don't know. There's a bit of the first 10-15 minutes against Dublin where they had plenty of possession, went for goal chances, and it smacked a bit of we can turn it on whenever we need to. But it also smacked a little bit of me as are they as good as perhaps we think as well? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. And I think Waterford would fancy it. I think they have a game that can trouble, similar to Dublin. I think Waterford have better players in Dublin, and I think they didn't get their running game going against Clare, right? Because Clare were so good. But I think a game that they play, and if they can implement it right, I think Waterford can trouble Galway, and I think Waterford can take Galway. I think Waterford will fancy it on the back of an underperformance and a lack of form, believe it or not. And that sounds an absolute contradiction. The only thing seeping in the back of my mind is Stephen O'Keefe, DeBorka, Pádraig Mahony, it's still in the back of my mind how important Tig is to the team, and I know some people think I love the man, you know what I mean? I kind of go on about him the whole time, but I couldn't stress how important he is to the Waterford setup in general, like over the years, over the last 7-8 years, for what he brings to the others in terms of the others being able to be out in front of their men around the field, whilst he's the only one that's kind of sitting and going as well at the same time. It's and Sock as well. Our own clubman was in the goal at the weekend, excellent on the goal, right? And Sean O'Brien, and he'll probably go with him now that it's a week later, right? And deserves his chance, etc. I'm not saying for a second that he's not up to it. The point I'm making is the experience of De Burke, O'Keefe, and Mahoney when we come against that top 3 opposition. That's the little lingering doubt, And I think Pádraig's role has been he's almost been forgotten in the narrative, in regards to how important Pádraig Mahoney is to Waterford. Yes, he's not that kind of Jack Pender or the Shane Menace. He's not the Caleb Lyons. He's not the runner. He's different. He's a fella that plays on the outside, pops you 4 from play, gets you 3 from play, sets up, links the play, and he's important to us as well. But I just think Waterford will really, it's not the draw they wanted, because I don't want to give anyone any fuel, but I think they'll fancy it,
Yeah. And I suppose Derek,
I think they will too. You'd have to say.
I was going to say, Derek, Tig, you spoke about Limerick, about that in-game tactical change, that intelligence. Like Tig definitely brings that to work. He's able to read it on a given day, because a game can present different scenarios, and Pádraig and Saki as well. They bring that to that Waterford setup, don't they?
And TJ, I honestly saying in the 5 years, I'd say if I had 5 conversations with Tig that were around to any type of tactics, sometimes people would have this perception that he controlled it. You talked earlier on about the players being intelligent. You wouldn't actually have to say anything to this fella. This fella would kind of figure it out. He go forward when he needs to go forward. He sits back. He talks to the fellas around him. But year 1 or 2 of Waterford, he wouldn't even, he's quite and reserved, don't fella. But bring him onto a field, and the buzzword now is game management, and his ability to be able to organise the whole defence, and those ones that come into the edge of the square when a fella's not going to drop it out of his hand. Those kind of bread and butter kind of balls where bang, he's just there and he's on it, and he also likes he likes to tackle too. He brings everything to it. And look, I'm not lamenting the ability. Anthony Daly has serious ability to grow into that position. He's the best of what's available there in terms of, and Earl is a great hurler in his own regard. And I don't want to bring the Tig debate to highlight the fact that Earl is well able, but you have to take into account the loss, and a significant loss, that this guy is to the overall thing when it comes to the game.
Dalo, I think
we don't really know anyone's state of health, TJ. I was going to say, I was thinking about this last night driving down, right? Maybe that's why the car was telling me I was fatigued. We've less news now than before we had phones. But fellas just go for an old pint, or they'd meet after mess, and they'd actually tell each other, I met a man. He told me a story now, what's going on in Galway. It's very hard to hear anything about your own county, isn't it? Isn't it?
Absolutely,
there's levels of secrecy now that's brought in, but you look at that's the way it's gone. Galway, Mark, they have to be hurting, they have to be hurting, don't they?
Surely. Yeah. I mean, they gave a fierce performance last year, and I'd say if they didn't go as defensive against Limerick, I think they could have beat them in the semi-final last year. They only discovered with 6 or 7 minutes ago, let's throw everything at them, and they nearly reeled in Limerick. And I thought the league was really strong this year, really, really big scores, and they have discovered a couple of extra. I suppose Evan Nyland and Brian Concannon for me were, I won't say fines because they've been around for a couple of years, but they were totally blotted out against Dublin. And Nyland didn't start, which I thought was strange as well. So I think the Galway first 15 will be the first instinct to me as to how they're going to approach the game against Waterford. If they'll end up playing Adrian Toohey wing forward again, right, then I give Waterford a right chance of winning, because they're basically saying, we're not going to really go with 6 forwards. We're going to go with 5 and maybe play a bit more defensive. If they'll go with 6 out-and-out forwards, I think Galway will win the game. And I don't know, Derek, I know you mentioned the match will probably be on in Thurles. I think there's a strong feeling that there could be a double header in Croke Park on Saturday, because Croke Park is available and there is a mute around at maybe 1:30 and 4:00, and having a bigger potential supporters there. So that'll be interesting as well as to whether that'll happen or not. But for me, Galway is a recovery mission, Anthony. They are definitely not as poor as they played against Dublin. And if they have anything in the locker in terms of being potential All-Ireland contenders, they'll come out with all guns blazing against Waterford on Saturday. And I feel they will. I think they've had the same as Cork now. They've had a couple of weeks to sit back and lick their wounds. I mean, Cork is slightly different because we're beaten by the All-Ireland champions. Galway's away different, being beaten by total outsiders in Dublin, who are a good team, but like they would have been expected to beat them handy. I think the Galway lads will be getting it in the neck from their own supporters about the performance against Dublin. And again, if there's anything in them to say that they're All-Ireland contenders, I think they'll win on Saturday.
Okay, and TJ, we're about to set a new record for time, and obviously we were always going to, I suppose, the weekend was in it, and what we have to look forward to, but I think StreamYard runs out, the system we're on after 2 hours, so TJ, sum it up and call it for me.
Right, like Henry VIII said to his wives, Dalo, I won't delay. The outside the wire is a massive influence in this game, I think. There's huge question marks about the first 15 and the positioning. Does Dahi Burke stay at 6? Where does Joe Canning play? Cathal Mannion, where does he play? Where does Ozzy play? Where does Shane Bennett play? Where does Patrick Curran play? So I would say both management teams will have an awful week of chopping and changing and looking at each other. The league game will come into focus. And look, there's also, and unfortunately being here, there's a huge tendency to force things when you've had, let's say, a questionable performance or a performance that maybe you mightn't have liked, right? So this week again will be huge there. I think both managements have to nearly abide by, they've trained it, now they got to trust it, and they got to trust their players. They got to pick their team on merit and go for this. There's a great opportunity for the winner here. I think outside the wire, and as Mark said there, the first 15 named from either side here is going to give you a flavour as to who trusts maybe this more, right? And I just don't know. Like if you ask me, like I could say maybe I have a little bit of an allegiance to Galway because I spent 3 years there. They were fierce disappointed. I was talking to a player there. I was talking to plenty of people there. I was talking to Kevin there. Like, they just didn't see that coming. Maybe it was an overlook. Like, you can't say that at the management team. But there was massive hurt and disappointment. They did think and they did believe that they were probably number 2. They've taken their eye off the ball. They have a chance to rectify it. Massive game for them.
It's a massive. I find it impossible to call it. Whoever will show up, I just think maybe they might be a little bit more hurt than Galway. Maybe it's a 3-year plan with Liam, and I don't know. It's a huge one. Whoever will win it will be on momentum, and will have a serious chance of being at the business end. And I love the thought, Mark, of a double header in Croker. I know some people now would be giving out shite about having to travel and me saying it, but Clare love Croke Park. We get there usually, we play okay. Yeah. So I'd be hoping that might go ahead. I think the more they can go and watch it would be great. Hopefully they do something with the prices, sorry. Because I think a lot of people were complaining there was no children's option at the weekend, and that's why there was so many tickets floating around. And the Wexford people basically didn't travel to Thurles. It was 3-1 Clare, from what I'm led to believe. Now, I wasn't obviously there. So let's look. We have to say, Derek, we were lucky to be in Croke Park. We won't debate it now for the Joe McDonagh final. I think we're both in agreement it should be the curtain raiser for the All-Ireland final. That's where it needs to be. Huge congratulations to Westmeath, two losing finals and finally getting the reward. Tough, Kerry back-to-back, tough to take. Probably not as good a form as last year, and hard luck to Fenton, and well done to Shane and his players, and great one for them, because we were speculating that with Antrim probably going down and probably Offaly coming up, that Joe McDonagh is going to be a fair animal of a place to be in next year. So huge congratulations to Westmeath, and hard luck to Kerry. And fantasy-wise, doesn't much change. Larry's still on top and Hoagie's still in the bottom, and Landers is slipping down the table. He's come back to us bit by bit. So Pam will have to be a meeting called again shortly. Give us a look at the tables there. I think TJ the hurler on the ditch is off the top, is he?
He's off the top.
I'll say nothing. I'll hold my powder. I'll just say from Gerard Dowd. No, it's tight up there. There are some
It might be
scores.
in a bit of a crisis. Yeah, they might be in a bit of a crisis, but they're up there on Shane Hassett. The Hass is up top there, 8:45, along with Gerard Dowd from Burgess, and the hurler is only 4 points behind them. So, going well there, lads. Fairness to Mikey Flynn, shout out there. Sure, they're still useless in a Piercing. No, I don't mean a Piercing. Well done, Mike. You're in the top 7, and you're second in Limerick, I believe. But well done. I see Gary Gilfile there into the top 10 as well, son of the great Tommy Fecal. Yeah, and our own one then, Larry's on top. You better short up there, Larry. Sure, come on. Yeah, fair play to you. Massive score, Larry. Shane McGrath, huge score, nearly 300. Mark, the worst score of the week. Are things beginning to go like normal? Like I don't know.
Jeez. Landers, if you finish bottom this time round, it's all over.
Oh,
this
man.
will be some disaster after a brilliant start. You can't handle that.
Oh man.
Dalo, the only thing I will say personally is, right, I have TK as captain, right? It didn't happen for him this weekend. TK doesn't do 2 bad ones in a row, right? My shout out is to him. He's going to wreak havoc at his Cork defence the weekend, and I'm going to get double the points. Larry killed me there with Paddy Purcell in the middle of the field. Great pick. So I'm chasing. But we're probably about halfway.
I'm second from bottom. I need these Waterford fellas to deliver, Derek. I need Shane Bennett to go back up corner forward. I need Jamie to start and get about 1-3 from midfield. And I need my captain, Stephen Bennett, to get 2-2. So there you are, like that's Butler Hurley's lads. Shout out, great crowd, always behind us. And look, lads, almost at the 2 hours. Huge thanks to Renault, our sponsors, and to all our listeners, lads. What a weekend of hurling. What a double header, hopefully, as Mac Landers, who always has the inside track on all things of the coming from Crow Park, actually, not just local. Best of luck to all teams. Limerick can sit back and relax, and you can see him there. I'd say he might be going for a liquid lunch. You'd never know. The straw hat is back on. Too old, too slow, too far. Bye, folks.
With Renault, passion for what drives you. Official car partner of the GAA.
A grain of rice. A grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lad.
There's a small bit of a needle there.
Now, come on, Mayo. You've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Our mission was to show that we're no longer the whipping boys of